Good morning, or good day, whatever part of the day it is for you. Hi, I'm Dale Franks. Welcome to the training webinar. We're going to do something different starting today. I don't know how many weeks this is going to take to go through, but we are going to we're going to head down a rabbit hole starting today. I am reminded of a Saturday Night Live cold open with Dan Aykroyd in about 1977, 1978 or so, where Dan Aykroyd opens playing President Carter giving one of his fireside speeches, in this case on inflation. And the line that has stuck in my memory since I was a kid is Dan Aykroyd saying, "My fellow Americans, tonight I'd like us to look at inflation in a totally new and different way. Inflation is our friend." Well, today, and however many weeks it takes to go through this, we are going to look at Process Director in an entirely new and different way. So buckle up, strap in, kids. This is going to be interesting. So far in Process Director, in all of our training webinars, I have discussed Process Director in a particular use paradigm, which is to say that we have an application that consists of a form and a process timeline and whatever supporting objects we need. And I have sample after sample that I use in the training webinar that uses Process Director in this way. And every training webinar I've really ever given, we always have that same paradigm. We have a form, we have a process that controls who gets to see the form and who gets to approve things and what have you, and then the email template that goes along with that. But you don't have to use Process Director in that way. You can, in fact, unify all of your approvals. The idea behind this started several years ago whenever we began developing some applications for some of our life sciences customers, and we built them on Process Director. That has evolved over the years to a number of products that we sell outside of Process Director, most of which have always been pointed at the life sciences community for, approval of scientific papers or for document approvals. But we actually have a product that does something a bit different. I'm also noticing that my screen sharing appears to be a little bit off there. So I'm showing you stuff I don't usually show you. So forgive me, let me reset this. No, I'm at the, sorry. I just noticed that my Zoom window was a little bit off, my sharing window. Forgive me. Anyway, we've developed these products largely for highly regulated industries, so most of you are not going to have them. But we do have another product, and it is built on Process Director, so it's kind of an add-on. It's called Appruvia. There are, again, flavors of Appruvia that are so specific to life sciences that they wouldn't be useful to you. But we do have a version of Appruvia, which, by the way, you could buy. I'm not in sales, but this is a product that we sell. It's built on Process Director. It works on Process Director. So you could buy it for your organization. I'm sorry, I have no idea what the pricing is or anything like that. Like I said, I'm not in sales, but this product exists. And this version of Appruvia is a unified approval system, which is to say you can, as a submitter, submit any sort of approval. It's probably hard for you to see because of the text size, but I have some different reviews going on here. I have a change of major, I have a curriculum review, I have an employee transfer, I have a marketing asset review and approval, I've got an employee offboarding process, an employee onboarding process. So I've got HR stuff, I've got faculty stuff, I've got marketing materials, all of which are handled through Appruvia through the same process. And I just create a process form. And on this process form, I have a function area, and we'll just go with employee administration in this case. And then I have a process type. Now, this is a really complex product, the way that it is set up. I have a workspace for submitters who can submit all of these different types of forms, whether they're HR forms or whatever. I've got a reviewer workspace, and this is where reviewers go to see the things that are assigned to them. So here's a marketing materials for a medicine that I made up called trifluozumab, and this is the review process for that. We can open up that form and take a look at it. There it is. And you can see this is the function area is biologics, and it's marketing asset review and approval. So it's that one. So I guess this is kind of life sciences. And we've got a system administration area. Now, the way that this all works is we have these functions. So we have these 4 functions that we saw that were in that drop down, and each user has a role. So we'll go with BP. Oh, well, that's probably not a good one, because let's go with demo contract manager. And you can see that the contract manager has all of these functions that they're allowed to be or expected to be a reviewer for: employee administration, faculty administration, and WTP test, whatever that is. And then there is system configuration, where we can set up what the reviews are for all of the different types of processes that we have. So we can see these are the people who are reviewers for an employee transfer. These are the people who are reviewers for a contract review, and so forth. Now, it's not possible, I would expect, at least not in the short term, for any of you to be able to build a product like that on your system. You could certainly obtain it from us. All it would take is some amount of money and you would have it. But that's a very complex system, and it requires a lot of custom scripting and stuff to work in the background. So you wouldn't be able to build something that sophisticated, but you can build something like it. Hence, unified approvals. So what we are going to do is, for this session, we're going to take a look at this unified approvals system that I set up. It works fine. It's a little rudimentary, but I'm going to spend a good part of the time today sort of going through what all of the pieces are. And once I've gone through and explained that, and I don't know how long it's going to take to just go through the background and just show you and just do a demo of it. We're going to rebuild this from scratch. And so however long it takes to rebuild this from scratch, we're going to do it over the next N number of weeks. So what our goal is to be able to build a single system where we can submit any type of approval and have it go through its own unique process. Now, I don't have the ability with Process Director in its vanilla setup to do the kind of system administration that we just saw, where I have functions and roles, and I've got alignments so that different users are aligned to different roles. Maybe when we're done, we'll explore some analogs of that. And in fact, I have kind of an analog of that sort of built into this. But you can build a system that you can build a single timeline, and then you can have any sort of request that you need, use that timeline, so that when you build a new approval process, you don't necessarily need to build a timeline along with it. You can use the unified approval timeline and the template for the unified approval form to make a custom form if you need, that will submit. And because we have all of these different forms bifurcated out into functions and processes, which I'll explain in a little bit, we can actually create a system where all I need to do if I need a new approval is just, if it's a new process, add that process and get that into the system via Excel spreadsheet. And then I can create a custom form for it. All I have to create is that custom form. And I don't have to jump through all of the other hoops of creating an entire application because I have all of the building blocks already there for the application, for its process and for the approvals and everything. So we're going to get into that over the next N number of weeks. Like I said, I don't know how long it's going to take me to go through all of this. So this is going to be a very advanced set of webinar topics. Well, this webinar topic is going to be a very advanced series because the way we're doing things, we're going to have to set up our system in a particular way. So to begin, there are two things that you need to remember that are vitally important for making all of this work. Number one, it is the folder setup that you use and the folder organization. This is extremely important because of the way that imports and exports work. So just to clarify, my approval process is in this folder. It's called approval process. This is the only approval process I need. This is going to handle everything. So it's going to be it could be a very complex timeline, but that's okay. I only need this one timeline, but it's super important that the folder structure works, that it's set up in this particular folder structure. So the reason I have a parent structure here, I have unified approvals, and then I have a subfolder called approval process that contains my approval, is because of how the form template is going to work. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to create a template in a subfolder called template folder. And this is my approval form template. Now, sort of a preview, what we're going to have to do is whenever we have if we want to make a custom approval form, and the first thing I'm going to make is just a generic approval form. Then later on, we'll talk about how custom approval forms would work. What I'm always going to have to do if I need to have a new approval form is I'm going to have to export this template. Now, I have some stuff in my downloads folder that I think I need to get rid of. I've got a whole bunch of PDZ files and a bunch of log files and stuff like that. So I need to delete those. There we go. And now I can go ahead and export my template. And I'll export it and I will save as, and that should go into downloads there. And so we'll hit save, and that saves my approval form template. All of my approval forms, okay, thank you. I keep clicking OK instead of close. All of my approval forms are in this subfolder called approval forms. And I'm going to go ahead and import my new form. So we'll go to import objects and we'll browse to our downloads folder, grab our approval form template and import it. And this import works fine. Let me tell you why this import works fine. By the way, we're going to go here and we're going to change this to generic approval. And so this is going to be my generic approval form. Now, the reason that this works is because of the folder structure. My template form is in a subfolder called template. The process is in the approval process subfolder. What that means is that when I do an import of this template form, it is going to look up one level to the unified approvals folder. Then it's going to try to find in that parent folder a approval process subfolder. And then in that subfolder, it's going to expect to find my process timeline. The way that imports work when you import an object is it tries to find when you have a linked object. So if we look at our template form, the template form is actually linked to the approval process. We want this linkage here so that we know what process we're going to start and what the timeline is that's associated with the form. This is only going to import if the approval process itself, the timeline, the approval process timeline, is located in a sister folder or brother folder, a sibling folder. That's the term I'm looking for. If it's a sibling folder of the current folder, right? So it's going to go up one level. It's going to look for the name approval process, and then it's going to go in there and look for the approval process timeline. So because both the template and the approval forms are at the same folder level, then when I import my approval form and I get my generic approval form, the approval process for that generic approval form is still going to be pointing to the right process timeline. So folder structure and the way that we're constructing this is going to be super important, because when I'm doing imports, especially of the approval form template, which presumably I'm going to have more than one of these approval form templates. Certainly over time, I'm going to want to create some custom ones because I'm going to need some custom form fields for certain approval processes that don't exist for others. So I'm always going to have to export this form and re-import it. That's really all I'm going to have to do, other than the actual editing of the form itself that I'm going to have to do just to make the appropriate changes for that particular approval process. But I want to be sure that all of these links are kept the same. Number two thing that we have to remember is that business or system variables are going to be our best friends, because I am going to be using multiple forms, all of which are going to be using the same timeline. I'm going to have 20 or 30 forms that use the same timeline. Now, I can link the form to the process timeline always. What I can't do, if we look at the approval process timeline, what I can't do is associate that timeline with a form. Now, I can certainly associate it with an email template, and I have the email template over here in my templates folder. It's fine. We'll take a long look at that email template at some point in the not too distant future. But what I can't do is associate my form with the process timeline. That has a huge implication for how I'm going to have to build all of my objects. The only way that I am going to be able to get values to this process timeline to determine, for example, when certain items run. So, for example, if I'm submitting an accounting process, I only want to go through whatever my accounting approval process is. In this case, it happens to be a single activity. This could be a parent activity. It doesn't matter. The thing that's important here is I've got to be able to pass a system variable value to it. In this case, I'm passing the function field. But I can't specify a form, because if I do, it's going to want to use the function field from whatever specific form that I configure in options on my form for timeline. But I can't do that. I can't have a form for timeline on this particular process timeline. The form for the timeline will be whatever form invokes it. When the form invokes this process timeline, the form will automatically be attached as a process timeline attachment. I will then know the context of the form that is associated with the process timeline. But that association will not occur until the form instance invokes a new timeline instance. Then the association occurs. At that point, I can pass system variables back to the form and to the process timeline. However, the other thing that we have to remember is that I also, on my business, on any business rules that I use, Everything is going to have to be done by system variable as well. So if I'm going to do what I built in here, I'm going to have to use system variables to pass everything. I'm going to have to use system variables to pass users to the process timeline. For example, if we go here to ad hoc approval, my participants are all going to have to be assigned via system variable because I can't assign them via form field, even though they are in fact form fields that are assigning them. If I'm going to pass business rule values back and forth, I'm going to have to parameterize my business rules, and I'm going to have to send the parameter to the business rule via system variable, and the value that gets back, I'm going to have to be able to read it via system variable. So rather than doing all these direct links like we're used to doing when we have one form and one process timeline, we're going to have to use system variables very extensively to make all of this work. Now, I have created a generic approval form. You saw me do that just a few minutes ago. So let's just run it and let's look at what the approval form does, what it looks like, and then we'll dig down into the details when we start recreating all of this stuff. So I'm just going to run this generic approval form. It's going to have to compile here real quick because I just imported it and it's never run before. So here is my generic approval form. Well, the first thing I would need to do is replace that X with something useful, but fine, I didn't do that. But what we're going to do is we're going to need to pick, and these are required fields, I'm going to need to pick a function. So I'm just going to pick, facilities. And then I need to pick the facilities process that I'm going to use. So obviously these are two dependent drop downs. So based on what I choose here in function, it's going to show me different processes. So let's say cleaning service. And I want you to note that the process manager has already been filled in. We're going to take a look at all these individual objects and their configurations in a little bit. So just hang on. I'm going to need a supervisor, which I'm going to make as me so that I can be a participant in all of the processes. I've got some generic fields here. They're just there for illustrative purposes, whatever generic fields that you want to put into any approval process. We've got it. I have a details tab where I can put in my request details, and I have a blank area here that says custom field 1. Obviously, there's not a single approval form that is going to be valid for all different types of approvals. So the reason this details tab exists is that if I need to customize this form and add additional form fields in any way, the form fields that I add will depend on the particular details that the user is expected to supply. And this will be the tab that we'll configure to put any of those custom fields into if we need anything in addition to these request details. Then I have an approvers tab. Now, the whole purpose for this approvers tab is to show you how that we can, and I got to be sure I'm one of the approvers, that we can have additional approvers that we can just add on an ad hoc basis. So I'll just add Diana Stewart there. And those are the only 3 tabs I have to fill out. And so when I submit it, it's going to begin my process of approvals for a facilities approval. So let's look at our overview tab. I am now running in the supervisor approval activity. There are my instructions, and I have the ability to approve, to resubmit, or to deny. So if I hit resubmit, I have to enter approval comments. So we'll do that. And we'll resubmit this particular request. It now goes back to the initiator resubmission step where I now have to resubmit. So as the initial initiator, I will submit my request. Again, the revised request that will take us back to our supervisor approval. Everybody can resubmit or what have you. We're not going to repeat that. We're just going to go through the process. So here's my supervisor approval. So my supervisor will go ahead and approve. Now we're running in facilities approval. So if we look at our routing slip, we can see what has happened. Supervisor approval, initiator resubmittal, then supervisor approval again. And now we're back at facilities approval with the appropriate activity name and instructions. So I'm going to approve it as facilities approval. And it's going to come back to me. Ad hoc approval. You're an ad hoc approver. This is the approver that I added on the approvers tab. And in fact, if we look at the routing slip, we can go and see that Dale Franks and Diana Stewart are both assigned as approvers. Now, I'm going to go ahead and approve it as me. And when I do, it will make Diana not required because I've got it set up so that only one ad hoc approver has to approve it. As you can see, Diana shows up here as not required anymore. And now we are at process manager review, where once again, I can resubmit. I can't deny. This is just, I'm the process manager. I manage the facilities process requests, and I look over all of them. And once I do, I can review them. And when they're reviewed, we are done. I can also ask for a resubmittal at that step, but now my approvals are done. Now, I've got a number of emails that go out, obviously. Here's my email template. Supervisor approval, cleaning service, CL6 is my ID for the cleaning service. You're the supervisor and approve this. Everybody gets a similar email until the end user or the submitter receives their email template. Now, I've added every possible thing on this email template, so it has more stuff than you would probably send, but I'm just doing it for illustrative purposes to show you all of the things that we can do on this email template. And remember when I said that system variables are your friend, we're going to have to use a lot of system variables in the email template to make this work. I should run it one more time for the specific purpose of showing what happened. We'll do accounting this time. We'll do an expense report. Again, I'll pick myself as the supervisor. This time I'm going to disapprove it. And the reason I'm going to disapprove it is to show you what happens on the email when it gets disapproved. So there are my approval comments. I'm going to deny this request. Obviously, it's going to end my process timeline, or at least the approval portion of that process timeline. And in the fullness of time, I will receive this email, which tells me why it was denied. Nope, no way is my approver comment. So I have a lot of stuff happening on this particular one. And notice this is now EX3, my request number. So my other request number was CL6 or whatever. This is now EX3. It's what was an expense report. And we'll get into the details of how all that works. I can do this same thing many different times in terms of how I want this to work. But we'll get back to that later whenever we start talking about the form itself and how I can configure it. We'll do that a bit later. I guess I don't need to. I'm so used to deleting these forms after testing, it's just become automatic muscle memory. Okay, so now we've seen how the thing works. Let's talk about how it's built. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of these objects. We're going to take a look at how they're configured. And that may be all the time that we have to do today. If we do have the time at the end of this session, I'll start rebuilding all of this from scratch so that we can see it work. But for now, let's take a look at each of the objects. Where do we need to start? Well, the thing that makes all of this work is just a little bit of data. And I have that data here in supporting objects. And The only data that I have so far, and we could make this much more sophisticated, but I wanted to keep this at a level of scope that would at least be somewhat comprehensible, is I've got this spreadsheet here. We'll download this and pop this open. Now, when I showed you Approvia a few minutes ago, we saw that page that showed me all of the different processes and who gets assigned to each process. I can't do anything nearly as sophisticated, but what I can do is define what my functions are and what my processes are. So I have functional areas in my organization. In my case, in this particular example, and let's expand these columns so that we can see them a little bit easier. So in my case, I've decided to model 4 functions: human resources, information technology, facilities, and accounting. So these are my major functional areas in my organization. Now, each of these functional areas are going to have their own specific processes that are only relevant to a specific functional area. Onboarding may be different. And so or offboarding may be different, because that's sort of a cross-functional request. Now, the nice thing about this particular model that I have constructed for you for the training webinar is that if I do have cross-functional requests, I can again address them all in the same timeline simply by moving to or setting the needed when properties appropriately so that the individual IT or accounting or facilities processes or approval processes all happen in the context of something that is cross-functional, like an employee onboarding or an employee offboarding. So for my processes, each process, again, I'm using 2-letter codes. Now, as it turns out, I probably should have used 3 or 4 letters, because on my first iteration of this, I had the same 2 letters repeated for a couple of different things, and that got super confusing. So whatever system that we set up, I set up 2-letter codes. You could just use numbers, I suppose. There's no reason you have to use a text code, although knowing what number applies to what process is kind of tedious to have to look up all the time. But I've got my process code and my process name. And for each process, you can see the function that that process is running under. So I have 4 HR processes, 4 IT processes, 2 for facilities, and then 6 for accounting. So I have all of these different processes that run. Obviously, as I created more items, I would need to create more process codes and process names. I might have to create more functions, but this is the fundamental building block that makes all of this work, because I'm going to need to use these codes quite a lot in various objects to know what it is that I'm supposed to do in my process timeline. So with this data, I can create the appropriate business values. So I have my query for functions that always returns the same 4 functions. So I'm happy with that. My process list, not quite as simple. It won't return anything unless I provide it with a function. So if I go with AC for accounting and I test my query, it's going to return my 6 records for the 6 different processes that run in accounting. The purpose of these business values is for use on the form so that I can fill that function and process drop-down controls on the form. I'll be filling them from these business values. So you'll select a function from the function drop-down, and based on what you select in that function, it will fill the process drop-down with the appropriate option. So if I select, as the example here, accounting as my functional area, then it's going to return these 6 records so that I can choose in the function drop-down from these 6 options that are available for accounting. By the way, this is all exportable. So if you want it, I can give it to you because it has its own data source, which goes to the internal user database where my Excel data is stored. So that's just, that means that when you import this, it will all just run whenever you import it, and it'll all work. I've got this business value. Now, for each process, I need to be able to supply who the process manager is for that process. Now, as you can see in this business rule, I am the process manager for all processes, obviously, so that I can run through the entire process and do all of the approvals without having to impersonate users constantly. This is a parameterized system variable. I have a parameter called process. Now, the thing with parameterized business rules, it's a parameterized business rule. The thing with parameterized business rules is that you have to call them via system variable because parameters can only be passed via the system variable. So to grab the data that I need from this system variable, or from this business rule, I'm going to have to pass the system variable to it, and then it's going to return whenever it processes that parameter process. It is going to look to see what the value is, and based on that value, whichever process it is, it's going to return a user. That means it's going to return a user object, which means that I can use the system variable, but I've got to format it properly to do what it is that I need to do on the form. Let's put a pin in this business rule. We're going to come back to it whenever we look over the form configuration. So those are my supporting objects. Often we say, where are you going to start whenever you're building a process? Well, for this one, we're definitely going to start with the supporting objects. We have to have those specific supporting objects, or we're not going to be able to configure our form or our process timeline to work the way that we want it to work. So let's take a look at the process timeline, because the process timeline is kind of independent of anything else, and so it exists by itself. Now, as we talked about earlier, we don't have a form for timeline. What we do have are just all of my different sections of the timeline that are going to run every time it gets called. I have my set request number, which we've talked about any number of times, which sets the request number. And it sets, this is a custom task, and it just uses the set form data custom task to set the request number to a unique value. In this case, it's the process name, the process code, actually, from the process name field, a sequence number that is going to be unique for each year. So it's going to start from 0 at the beginning of each year. That's pretty much standard stuff. All of my approvals are going to be inside an approval loop, an outer approval loop. It has the normal setup where we jump back to the top of the loop. If anybody says resubmit, we cancel the loop. If anybody says deny, or I think I have one result for the initiator resubmitter that is cancel. So if it's deny or cancel, we just escape the loop and our process ends. We go straight to the disposition notification down at the very bottom. My supervisor approval and accounting approval, HR and IT and facilities. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 different functional approvals plus the supervisor approval. Supervisor approval always happens. And we're going to identify the supervisor on the form. Now, again, remember, we can't use a form field to identify the participant. So we're going to have to set this to a system variable. Now, I'm using a user picker. Now, by default, the user picker returns the user's name. That's its default behavior. That's not the data that it stores. To actually take a user object and apply a user as a participant, I have to use the UID for that user. That, in fact, is what the user picker stores, but it's not what it returns. It returns the username by default. That's an intentional behavior. The reason that we set it up that way is so that we can actually see the username rather than the GUID that is assigned to the user, because it's just a jumble of letters and numbers. So we have to, anytime that we're dealing with a user object, we are going to need to use the format equals UID on that system variable. This is a user picker form field. It's called supervisor. We'll look at it in a minute. But it's gonna want to return the name. In my case, it'll be Dale Franks. We don't want it to do that. So we want it to return the UID so that the system knows what specific user needs to be assigned. The system can't assign via name. It has to be via UID. So anytime that we're going to be using users, we're going to need to use that format equals UID to make this work. And same thing happens here with ad hoc approval. I have the same sort of setup. In this case, it's called approver and format equals UID. Now, in this case, the approver field is an array field, so it's actually going to return a comma separated list of UIDs, which is fine. However many users I select on that tab in that array, it's just going to assign all of them to the task, and they'll all run it in parallel. And the way that I have it set up is for the first user to complete it, completes it. That's an option. You can require all users to complete. That's up to you. The accounting approval, HR approval, IT and facilities approval. These are my individual activities that run based on what I select on the form. These are just user activities, the way that I have them configured here. You could, in fact, set them up as parent activities and just run the parent activity. And because they're parent activities, I could have their own unique approval processes in each one. In the interest of simplicity and comprehensibility, I didn't do that. I simply made them user activities. So they're not parents with their own, complex approval nesting inside a parent, but you could do it that way. I just didn't for simplicity's sake. So that is my process. Now let's look at my form and its configuration. It's in a template folder, first of all, because I'm going to make a form template. So I'm going to make the form template with all of the bells and whistles in it. And if we want to customize that and do some different stuff with it, we can do that after exporting it and re-importing it into our approval forms subfolder. Quick aside, I have a single subfolder called approval forms. I could have a HR approval forms, a subfolder for that, and I could put all of my HR approval forms. I could export the template and then import the new form into that HR approval. And I could do one for accounting and what have you. As long as they are at the same level, as long as they are a sibling folder of the approval process folder, the imports will work fine. Because the way that imports work, because we don't know what GUIDs are when we do an import, we have to look for names and relative file paths. So as long as these are all sibling folders, these approval form folders are all sibling folders of approval process, then whenever you do the import, it's going to look for the approval process timeline. It's going to go up one folder level, look to see if there is a subfolder named approval process. There will be. And then it will look in that folder for the timeline, and the linkage will just work out of the box. But it's super important that all of my running forms are in sibling folders of approval process. As I said, I have a single folder. We're going to put all of our forms in that one folder. But that might get confusing, especially as the system matures and you build more and more. So let's take a look at the form itself, the approval form template. As I showed you earlier, it's all hooked up to the approval process. This is important because I need to be able to invoke that. And the reason why I have this particular folder structure is that the export and the import will preserve this linkage. Now, if I had a different folder structure, would that make everything collapse? No, it wouldn't, but it would require that whenever you did the import, you would have to go back to the Options tab and you would have to reset the links for the approval process for the automatically start and timelines associated with property. It's not a major thing, but the goal here is to make this as simple as possible. So anytime that we can eliminate a required configuration, we do so. And that's why, and that's what our folder structure helps us do. We just never have to look in the Options tab. We always know that it's configured properly. Let's take a look at the form itself. Now, this is a tabbed form. I'm not a complete devotee of the tabbed form paradigm, but I think it makes sense in this case because as you create these forms, many of them will need their own custom fields, and you need to have a place to put those custom fields without messing around with the existing design. So in this case, the tabbed form does give me the ability to have this details tab right here. And in that tab, that will be the one place where I place any of the custom controls that are going to need to go into this form. So if I have, if I'm doing a purchase request, right, I'm probably going to need the amount of the purchase request. I may need, the line items. So I may need to drop in an array that has the line items for my items that I purchase, the item, the quantity, the unit price, and all of the normal stuff that we do with a purchase order. Well, I would put it on that details tab. I never really have to worry about editing any of the other tabs. They're already set in stone. They do what they do. All I have to worry about is this details tab. So this provides me with a single place to make all of the changes that I need to make. Like every other form, at the very top, I have the running activity and instructions that show up. I've got my 3 normal controls: submitter, submission date, and request number. One thing that I have noticed from some of you is that you're hiding the request number in an embedded section until the form is submitted. Whereas I'm doing that thing where I have the text here that says generated when submitted and whatnot. I think I like your way better. I think it's cleaner and it doesn't show me anything confusing on the form. And I'm kind of embarrassed that I never thought of that before. So I will be stealing that idea from you in the future. The important fields on this form are obviously my function dropdown, which is, well, it's not in field properties. It's in set form data. So I'll have, or field dropdowns tab. I'll have to look at that. Sorry. So functions and processes. Those are my 2 key fields that determine what approval process is going to run whenever I submit my form. I have a user picker to pick my supervisor. You can get pretty advanced with this. For example, if in your system you have your supervisors configured as part of your user profiles. I know some people do that, some other customers don't. If you already have everybody's supervisor identified in their user profile, then you could actually just fill this. Well, you wouldn't even need the form field. Technically, you could just fill that out. I mean, I have process manager here, but I technically don't need to have this form field showing. I don't need to use this form field at all because I have that business rule that we looked at earlier that actually returns who the process manager is. I could just assign the task directly to that process manager. I did this basically for demonstrative purposes. And then I have these generic fields here that don't mean anything. I have a request details field. This is for the narrative that I need for whatever request it is I'm going to make. It's basically a placeholder field. You may never use a field like this that requires a text narrative. You may just have your own custom fields that you want to apply. At the very bottom of this form, I've got my routing slip. Obviously, I've got my and the routing slip is inside its own tab, as we saw previously. Just below the tabbed area, I've got a signature comments control, which only appears whenever I have the opportunity to put in signature comments in a running task. Otherwise, it disappears. Then I've got my button area. And finally, at the bottom, I have this hidden section. It's called status. It doesn't have any fields right now, but you actually might want to put some fields in here. For example, if I was making a custom form, let's say a purchase order form, well, I wouldn't really need to show the function and the process up top. So what I might do is just take these two drop downs and place them down here in this hidden status section. And once I've done so, I could set the value for those fields. For example, once I move them down to the bottom, and when we build this, we'll play around with this as we create new forms. I could just go ahead and take this function and process field, stick them down here in this hidden section, and then just set their default value. So for the function, I could set it for AC for accounting. For the process, I could set it to EX for expense report. And these fields wouldn't need to be displayed at all. I could just go ahead and hide them, just as I could technically not have a process manager field on this form, or depending on how your system is set up, technically might not even need the supervisor field. I just need my whatever generic fields I have for any approval, and then the custom fields that I would want to put in for the particular type of request that I'm submitting. Right now, I don't have anything in status. Right now, everything is an active field here on the form itself. But when we start building this stuff, we'll change that setup. All right, so with that in mind, what time is it? 10:52. Great. So with that in mind, we are going to start rebuilding all of this stuff from scratch. So we're going to go into Unified Approvals, and we are going to create a subfolder called Webinar. And I call it that so that I know what I can delete. We're going to need basically 4 things in this folder. So we have to do our folder organization to make all of this work. So we're going to have to create some subfolders. So we'll create a folder for templates. And we'll need a folder which we'll call, oh, wait a second. I need to go up 1 level. I don't want to make a subfolder of templates. We need to go back up to webinar, back up to webinar, and we'll create a folder and we'll call that process. Oh, went up too far. And we'll need a new folder for our supporting information. We'll call that data. And finally, we'll need a new folder for our forms. So we'll just call it forms. So I've got my basic structure. the first thing to get out of the way, because we're going to be spending most of our time outside of the process, we'll do the process more or less last in this case. I am going to go ahead and create the process timeline. I'm not going to do anything to it. I just want it to exist for right now. So in the process folder, we're going to create a process timeline, and we're going to call it Unified Approval Process. And we're going to spell it correctly, ultimately. And I'm just going to create a generic activity. I don't care much about this. I'm going to have to come back and give this a lot more time and attention later. But for now, I just want it to exist. And the reason I want it to exist is when I create my form, I just want to link my form to this process timeline. Before I do that, before I can begin creating that form, I'm going to need to create the data that exists behind it. So once again, we're going to use this same data, which I just downloaded now that I think about it. I'm going to make some changes to it so that it's independent from the existing process. Well, that didn't show me what I wanted it to show me. So we'll have to browse to my downloads folder. Oh, no items match your search. Did I not download it to the downloads folder? I guess I didn't. So let me download a copy. Let's save as in downloads. Now I can open it. I'm just going to make a couple of little changes to it here. Actually, you know what? I don't need to change it here. I can just change it in the data source. So I am going to need a data source to make my Excel spreadsheet work. We're going to use the same Excel spreadsheet. So I am going to create the data source that I need for that. So it'll just be a data source, and I'm just going to call it Unified Approvals Data Source. And it's just an internal user database. I'll come back and select the specific tables later, but they don't exist yet. I'm going to need to create them. So I've got my data source. It works the way that I expect, obviously, because it's an internal user data source. So it just works automatically. Now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to import my Excel spreadsheet. Which is that one right there. We'll open that. We'll get that into Process Director. And now that I have it, we'll go through and set its database properties. So the data source for it is going to be my Unified Approvals data source that I just created. And my destination table prefix, it needs to be different from what I selected originally. I don't know what it was. So we'll just call this UAP underscores for Unified Approval Process underscore. And I will obviously want to drop the database table before import. I obviously want to create database tables if needed and automatically import this after every check in or prompt. This will enable me to download the spreadsheet, add new functions as necessary or processes, and then re-upload it and have the new data added to the internal user database. So I'm going to go ahead and click Import Tables now. And it should create my UAP functions and my UAP underscore processes table so that they now exist. I don't necessarily need to create my data sources now, but I know that I'm going to need them. So I'm going to go ahead and do it so that whenever I create my form, I can just zip straight in and set my fill dropdowns tab with my existing business values. So we're just going to create a new business value. And we will call this UAP underscore functions. I don't really need the underscore in a process director object name. So we'll remove it. We'll call it UAP functions. And for my group and value picker, we'll just call this UAP. And I'll go ahead and quickly update it. We'll use my unified approvals data source. Oh, one thing I wanted to do, because I don't want to look through every single table in here, although there are my two tables, UAP functions and UAP processes. So they exist. But for this particular data source, what I would normally do is, especially because it's a very limited use data source, what I would normally do is open the data source, go into select tables after I have imported my SQL or imported my Excel data into SQL, and I would just select those two tables because they now exist now that I've imported the Excel data. So I can go back here, I would select those as my two tables. And the reason I would do that is so that whenever I am setting up my business values, I'm only looking at the tables that are necessary for me. So in my case, functions and processes. So UAP functions, really only two functions. So I'm just going to go select star from, I probably could have typed it quicker than copying and pasting it. Order by function name, which again, I probably could have typed faster than the time it took me to copy and paste it. Select star from UAP functions, order by function name. That should be great. We'll go test query. That gives me my function code, my function name. Great. We're going to add those columns as properties and we're done. So it's always going to return this data. So we don't have to mess around much with it. So I've got my UAP functions. So I'm going to need to create a new one. And I can do this in one of two ways. The easy way to do it is to copy and copy here, and then I can open up my copy, and all I really have to do, I don't have to change my group and value picker. I can just call this UAP processes. And we'll go to UAP processes. So I'm still going to select, actually, I'm not going to select star. I'm going to select, in this one, function code, comma, and oh, no, not function code, process code. Select process code. So I need the process code and the process name from UAP processes. And I'm going to need a where clause. So where function code, I'm going to need a parameter because I'm going to have to pass a parameter to this business value, where function code equals, and because it's a text value that I'm passing, I'm going to need to use the single quote here, but I'm going to pass it via parameter, and I'm going to call the parameter function. And so our function code equals, and my $sign, because I'm using a parameter in a SQL statement, I want to make it SQL safe. Param, and the param is called function. I'll put an extra M in there that I don't need. I'll put my quote there. So where function code equals function. So if I type in AC here as my function code and I test the query, I have an invalid function name. Where is function name? Order by, I don't have a function name. I have a process name. I didn't change that. Let's test that query again. Invalid database column name, function code. Except that's not invalid. Select process code, process name from UAP processes, where function code equals param function order by process name. That should work. Not sure why it's not working. It's obviously something in MySQL, and I don't want to waste your time with that. So function code equals function order by process name. Hello? What have I done? Well, whatever it is, we're going to copy that and we're going to go back to UAP processes and we're going to paste it and we're just going to change the name from unified processes to UAP processes. And it worked. So I don't know what it was. I must have had either something misspelled or what have you, but I got something wrong. But that's fine. We'll add a parameter there. We'll do a retest there. And it's giving me invalid. Oh, here's why it's giving me the invalid database name. I've got the old properties in here and it can't set those old properties. Oh, of course, I got to get rid of those. Let's try that again. There we go. I got my process name, my process code, and now I can add the columns as properties and I'm fine. So it wasn't my SQL syntax. It was the fact that I had the wrong properties down there, but we generate the properties. Now we're good to go. We have all of the things that we need to begin creating our form. And the form is where we're going to spend a majority of our time. It's 11:07. Okay, well, we're not going to be able to finish the form, but we will be able to start getting into creating it. Got my process. I've got my background data. At this point, I have everything I need to build a generic form template for my application. So we're just going to create a new form template or a new form definition. And I am going to call it UAP form. Well, didn't want to capitalize all of it. Form template. And we'll hit OK. And it will take us straight into the online form designer. I want to make this a tabbed form so that we can replicate the features that we had. The first thing I need to do, of course, is make my header section. So we're just going to, since we're creating it from scratch, I guess we are going to have to go through the tedium of creating headers and stuff like that. So we'll go with one row and two columns, and we'll set that up. Let's highlight both of these columns. We'll set our cell properties for our background color for 082 F4D, which is the navy blue BP Logix color. And then on this first column, this table cell, we'll go to cell properties for it. And we'll set the width on this to 200 pixels. So we'll have a little smaller deal there. I will also, I should have done this before, I'll set the cell properties for my horizontal alignment to center. And now I'll use the image control. And in this case, I'm using the BP Logix image control. I'm sorry, I'm using the CK Editor Business Control, not the image control, not the BP Logix image control, because I'm going to go ahead and upload the upload the image. So I'm just going to go to upload. I'm going to go to choose file, and I do not have, I also didn't save it as a favorite. Fine. So we'll go to BP Logix logos, and I'm looking for my BP Logix logo mark white right there. I'm going to send it to the server, and I am going to reduce the width quite substantially to 190 pixels so that we get the logo mark there. And then in the next cell, I'm going to set my text color as white, and I'm going to hit Control B, X, approval form, and I'm going to set the size to something more appropriate. Well, I should probably set all of it to 48, shouldn't I? There we go. That's my X approval form. The X here is just a placeholder for whatever else it is that I'm gonna type up there. Great. Right below that, I'm gonna put in my section here for my task instructions and my running activity name. So layout is what I'm looking for. We're going to set an embedded section. We're just going to call this task section. Task section is what we're going to call it. And we'll put in running activity. And I like to use the system variable control for this. So activity, well, I really do need to make a system variable, don't I? Activity running name, activity running name. That looks correct. That is not correct, however, wrong key. Activity running name, and we'll just call this running activity. Well, running activity. There we go. And then we'll go to the next line and task instructions. And again, we'll drop in the task instructions system variable. It does need an S, and we'll just call it instructions. And then I'll drop in my embedded section end. I'm going to do the appropriate configuration for these. So I'm going to boldface the labels. They're not labels, of course. And for my hidden section here, I am going to go into its field properties, and I'm going to set its display option, and I'm just going to say field is visible when, and I'm going to click otherwise hidden, and I only want it visible whenever the timeline is actually running. So timeline status equals complete. Now, the nice thing about timeline status is that it works irrespective of what timeline the form is associated with. Timeline status is a form agnostic system variable. So, I'm sorry, it's a process agnostic system variable. Whatever the running process is in the context of the form instance, it's going to be counted as it's going to look at that timeline for the status. That takes place automatically behind the scenes. That's nice, because one thing that we might like to do, but that's going to be harder for us to do, for example, if we wanted to use a timeline activity like active activity users. It's going to want me to pick a timeline definition. And, well, I can't do that. Timeline activity, active activity users. There we go. So it wants me to select a timeline definition. I can't do it that way. So I can't make an active section here. So happily, timeline status is agnostic, but things like timeline, running activity users and stuff like that, that's not agnostic, because generally I need the name of the activity that's running to make running activity name or what have you work. So that's a hill that we'll have to climb over a little bit later. For now, though, we're great. We only want this section to show when timeline status is complete. Timeline status is timeline definition agnostic. It's just whatever timeline is running. If it's complete, and I don't want it to be complete, I want it to be active, because I only want to show this when the timeline is active, which means I don't want it to show up on new form instance, and I don't want it to show up once the form is approved. It should only show up, this section, whenever the timeline is active, which of course is the only time that these two system variables have any real context. So throw that section in at the top, and now we'll do our form UI. And here's where we have to start working with the tabbed interface. The tab interface is an interface that consists of two separate sets of control. There's the tab strip control, which also has a tab strip end. In between the tab strip, which begins my section of tabs, and the tab strip end, which ends the section of tabs, I have the tab content control. So each tab that I'm going to display in my tab strip has its own tab content and tab content end. So I'm going to need to create the tab strip and then all of the tabs that I'm going to need for the tab strip. It's best if we know what tabs we're going to need at any specific time. So you should know what tabs you need beforehand. Now, in our case, we are going to need 4 different tabs to make this all work. So I'm going to need a tab that's the generic tab for my request. So that's sort of my request info. I'm going to need my details tab. That's going to be the custom tab that is going to contain all of the custom fields that I'm going to have on my form. I'm going to need an approvers tab, because that is the tab that I'm going to use to select my ad hoc approvers as we build this out. And I'm going to need the routing slip tab, which is where my routing slip is going to be displayed. One of the nice things about the tabbed interface is it does solve the problem of where we need to stick the routing slip on the form. We're just going to put it into a tab. So I'm going to go ahead and build out my tabs. So I'm going to add the tab strip control first. Now, I know what my tabs are, so I'm going to have to name the tab strip. Generally, it's even though you see me do this a lot with a lot of different controls, right? Just keep the default name. It's generally a good idea to name the controls. It's especially a good idea to name the control of a tab strip and the tab ID, and to give them proper names so that you can call them and you can set different tabs as active if you have to, and what have you. So we're going to have to give them all good names. So we're going to call this the tabbed interface control, and sooner or later we'll get the name set right. There's a new property, which I talked about Tuesday, that will enable you to select the highlight colors for the tabs. I am not on the new version of the product here. I'm on, actually, I think I am currently on one of the patch versions. I don't remember right off the top of my head. So I don't have that new thing, but it is coming. There'll be a new property called highlight color where you can change the highlight color of your tabs. I'm not going to set up the command keys and the focus keys for accessibility purposes. Obviously, if you were building it for real for your organization, especially if you're uh, at a university or what have you, where you're kind of regulated on accessibility, you'd want to do that. I'm going to elide past that right now. We'll go straight to our tabs. So I'm going to need a tab called Details. And I'm going to give it the tab text. Now, here's a little cool thing that you can do. By default, the tab text property will accept HTML. And I kind of like to have my tab names highlighted. So I can drop in the HTML for, well, I shouldn't have capitalized S. So strong, and we'll call it details, and then we'll turn strong off. And I'm going to copy that so I can just copy and paste it down. We're going to have 4 tabs. So actually, the first tab isn't details. That's going to be tab 2. Tab 1 is going to be, I forgot what I called it. It's my generic tab, which is my, I'll just call it overview, which gives me the overview of what it is that I'm doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and call that overview. This one I will call details. The third tab I will call approvers. Approvers. And the last one I will call, we'll just call it routing. So I'm going to have 4 tabs. Now, my tab strip control says I'm going to have 4 tabs. So I need to have 4 tabs. So we're going to have to start creating those tabs now. So we'll go to layout and we'll drop in our first tab content control, which we are going to call overview, because that's what we named it as the tab ID on the tab strip control. So I'm going to put that right there. And then on the next line, I'm going to go ahead and add my, well, let me get my, do I want to put a blank line in there? Yeah, because I want to do my tabs first and then we'll do the tabs. So I'm going to put a blank line in and then just drop in my tab content end control. And then I'm immediately going to drop in another tab control. So there's another tab content. This one is called details. So that's my second tab, details. There we go. That's great. We'll give myself a blank line and a blank line and drop in. Oh no. Okay. Well, I didn't completely destroy my form. I thought for a second I just had wasted everything. I really should hit the save button more often on these forms, don't you think? So that I don't lose anything. So let me go through the saving here. Okay, now we'll drop in my tab strip end for the details. Oh, no, not the tab strip end, tab content end for the details. And we'll immediately throw in our third tab. So we need another tab content. And I called that one approvers, I believe. It's really important that you get these names right because the text has to match exactly. And we'll go down for our third tab content end. And our last tab, tab content, and that tab content tab is going to be routing, I believe. And once again, well, actually, since I'm here and it's only going to have a routing slip in it, I guess I can just go ahead and drop the routing slip control in here. And then go to the next line, drop in my tab strip, my tab content end. And then I'm going to drop in my tab strip end. And that's going to end my tab strip. Sometimes people like to drop down a line and put it on the bottom. It doesn't really matter except for sort of the spacing, although I think you wouldn't notice it with tabs as much as you would normally. Whenever it comes to the way that vertical spacing works, whenever the form runs at runtime. So that's entirely up to you. I am going to need a signature comments control. Now I'm going to put the signature comments control in below the tabs. The nice thing about the signature comments control is that it's kind of self-regulating about when it appears and when it doesn't appear. So it's really cool to be able to have it and be able to just stick it right here on the form. So we'll go with our signature comments, if I can remember where they are. There's it in other input controls. Signature comments, where is it? There it is right there. It's in input controls. Okay, fine. We'll have our signature comments control. And signature comments is unique enough that I can just go ahead and take off that digit at the end. The text for the signature comments control appears as the label for the control. So we can just put in approvers comments. And we're going to require this for if I'm going to ask for a resubmission or if I'm going to deny it, I'm going to want to require the user to make signature comments. I don't enforce that here. Obviously, I enforce it on the process timeline. I'll have to address it there, but I do want to let them know that these are going to be required comments. So required for resubmit or deny. And I'll just even give it a colon at the end of there. And now my approvers comments will show up above the signature comments control, and they'll only appear, both the label and the signature comments control, whenever I'm in the context of a task. And if I'm not in the context of a user task, I simply won't see that and they won't print onto the form. So I don't need to worry about them. All I need to do now is just drop in my button area control, which is going to go right below there. And then I'm just going to drop in a section control that I'm going to hide. Where's the section? Right there. That's what I'm looking for. So we're going to call this the status, I think is what we'd rather call this, status section. Now, right now, we don't have anything to put in that status section. So I'm going to leave it blank for the moment. But I'll give it a label called status fields. And I'm going to go into its field properties and I'm going to set this to field is hidden. This will always be a hidden field. Its only purpose is for me to put custom status fields on this form, which eventually we are going to need because we're going to want to make some custom forms. But for right now, we're going to leave it blank. We'll come back to it later as we need it. So at this point, I can go ahead and save my form. I have all of the items on it that I need to make this form work. I can, of course, obviously test it right now just to be sure that my tabs work. I have placed these in as horizontal tabs. They all work. It's all fine. So I configured everything correctly. So I guess I'm happy about that. Obviously, there's nothing to show on the routing slip because there is no routing slip. This form has not been submitted yet, but everything is working exactly the way I want it to. And I've got my details working, or my text working just fine. It's got my bold text the way that I like it. I'm a happy camper so far. I'm just checking to see if there's anything else I need to care about as far as the setup goes. There is not. So now let's start configuring our form with the data that we want. So for our overview, in the template, we're going to need a couple of things. We're actually going to want to have three things because we're eventually going to build out our process to use three things: the function, the process, the supervisor of whoever the current user is. They're going to need to select that. So we're going to need a user picker for that. And I'm going to want to put in the process manager. Normally, I wouldn't put the process manager in as a form field. Normally, I would just assign a task directly to the process manager. But you do have the flexibility of using the process manager in this way. So we're going to do that so that we can see different ways of assigning tasks. For the ad hoc approvers, which are also going to be user pickers, we're going to directly assign the task in the process timeline. And even though we're using a form field in this, you will see that we're going to use exactly the same method in the process timeline, whether it's a form field or whether it is a direct assignment. We are still going to do everything via system variable. We are not going to be able to use form field for the task assignee. So for this tab, let us go ahead and throw in a table. I'm going to need 4 fields. Let's just put in our basic 4 fields. So I'm going to need 4 rows on this table. I'm going to need 2 columns on that table. I'm going to hit OK. I've placed the table in the wrong place, so I'm going to Control Z my way out of that. I'm going to click inside the Details tab where I should have been in the first place, and we're going to replicate that. 4 rows, 2 columns, and we're going to go to this very first one here. We're going to right click on it. We're going to go to cell properties, and we're just going to set this first cell column to 150 pixels. Actually, this is not really the best way to do this because I'm just about to do something that for accessibility purposes is a bad thing. And so we shouldn't really do it this way. And so I am not going to do it this way. We're going to go ahead and set this up accessibility friendly. And we are actually just not going to use a table at all. We're just going to use labels and form fields. So we're going to drop in a label control, and we're going to call it function label. And the text is going to be function and colon. And the associated control is going to be the function control, which doesn't exist, but is just about to. Okay, so I am going to hit Shift Return. And the reason I'm going to hit Shift Return is I just want there to be a break tab or a break tag to go to a new line. I don't want to have a paragraph because the paragraph mark, if I just hit the Enter key, it puts in a paragraph mark. And I don't want it to be a paragraph mark because there's extra spacing for paragraphs. So I'm using Shift Enter to just throw in a break tag. I'll show you in a second what I mean. And we're going to throw in a drop-down control here that we are going to name function. and we're done. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the source. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save my form, and then I'm going to go into the source. So if I click on source here, and we'll do a quick search for function label, so that gets me down to where I want to be. So there's my function label control. And right there is what I'm looking for. So here's my function label control. And then there is a break here, and that's the tag that I'm looking for. That's a new line tab in HTML. And then it gives me my actual drop-down tab, or my drop-down control right there. And then after the drop-down control, there is a paragraph tag. And so what that means is that between my function label and my function control, it's just going to put in a break. And so those two controls will be spaced closely together, that label and that dropdown. But even though it doesn't look like it here, even though it looks sort of weird here, let's go through and let me throw in another control and we'll take a look at it. We'll run it and test it. So once again, we'll drop in a label control, and this will be the process label, text process semicolon, and the associated control ID will be process. And once again, we'll shift tab there and drop in another drop-down control that we're going to call process. So what I'm hoping to see whenever I run this form, so we'll save and run it. And while it's compiling, I'll have a sip of coffee. There we go. That's what I want to see. So I've got extra space between the function and the process. Obviously, there's no data here. We're going to have to supply that data, but we'll get back to that in just a second. So that's looking fine, and I'm just going to continue that with my other two form fields. So again, I just hit enter to go to the next line. And even though it looks weird in the online form designer, when it runs, it looks a lot better. So once again, we'll need a label control, and we will call this the supervisor label. Supervisor label, the text will be supervisor. And the associated control, well, I forgot the colon there. The associated control ID will be supervisor. And shift enter to go down for a break. And we will drop in a user picker. And this user picker will be supervisor. And then we hit enter again. And another label. And we'll call it process manager label. Label. Text will be process manager. And the associated control will be process manager. And we'll shift enter one more time, and we'll drop in our last user picker, which we are calling process manager. Okay, so these are my overview fields. I'm not going to add any more generic overview fields. We're just going to live with it the way it is right now. And my first tab is now configured almost. There are some things that I'm going to want to do. I'm going to want to ensure that these are all required fields. So we'll go to each one, which I should have done when I created them, but we're going to set all of these fields as required. because we're going to need them to make our process work properly. Well, field is required. Let's be sure that I hit field is required for that other one too. I did. I'm having mousing problems today. Feels like I'm losing fine motor control. No doubt a function of age. Okay, so all these fields are required. We'll go ahead and do a real quick test. And okay, I've got all my fields. We're fine. We're going to go ahead and go to our next tab, which is our details tab. Not going to throw any details on here right now, but I am going to throw in the sort of generic narrative field for this particular tab. So go to the label and we'll just call this, we'll call this field narrative. So I'll call this narrative label. The associated control will be narrative. And for the text, we'll just call this request details. That's what we'll call it for the text. Request details. And that will be our narrative field, or our label for our narrative field. Again, I'm going to hit Shift Enter to enter a break tag, and I am just going to drop in an input control, which I am going to have to name narrative. And we'll set the size to 60 columns wide, and we'll give it 5 rows. So it'll be a little bigger. Well, maybe 4 rows. Maybe it doesn't need to be that big. Maybe it doesn't matter. But that's going to be our request details field. On our approvers tab, we're going to need to drop in an array. So I'm going to have a label here. I am just going to call this label add, and I don't even need a label because it's not going to be associated with a control particularly. Ad hoc approvers. And I'm going to boldface that. Then I'll hit enter, go down to the next line, and I will drop in a table. It only needs to be 1 row and 1 column. All I'm going to do is throw in a user picker in an array real quick. So I am going to go to arrays. I'm going to go to array start, and I'm going to call this array ad hoc approvers, which I'm going to copy because I'm going to need that in a second. And then I'm just going to drop in a user picker, and I'm going to name it ad hoc approvers. Wait, I can't name that ad hoc approvers and name this control ad hoc approvers. So I'm going to call this the ad hoc approvers array. There we go. That works. Then I can call this user picker control. Wait a second. What did I do? I did it all wrong. This is my user picker. Oh, I have completely messed up. Erg. Of course. It's now going to be called ad hoc array. There we go. Ad hoc array, which now again, I'm going to have to copy. I'm going to call this user picker control ad hoc approvers, which is what I wanted to call it in the first place. Okay, I think we're fine. All we have to do now is drop in our array end control. And then we're just going to hit enter, or I'm sorry, not enter. We're just going to hit tab and we're going to add a button control here. So actions, button. No, it's not a button control. Sorry. I'm working with an array. I need to add an add row to array control. So we'll just call this. Okay. It really wants that array name, doesn't it? So we'll just call this my add row button. And the text will be add an ad hoc approver. And I am going to do a little button magic on this. So we're going to go to the icon here. What icon do I want? I obviously want this to be a white icon, and I want it to be the plus sign there. Forget that error that you just saw. That's something we've already fixed. And I'm going to pick a nice dark green color. Maybe that's a little too dark green. Okay, we'll go with that. I just want to be sure that it's dark enough to use the white text on there. Great. So now I've got my ad hoc approvers. I've already done my request details, got everything else. So I now have a working form template. So we're going to save and test the form. So there is my overview, my request details. That's fine. I've got approvers, add an ad hoc approver. Great. That is giving me a new row for each one of those. And I've got my routing slip, which currently is showing me nothing. I could, by the way, submit the form, except I have to put values in the field. So I cannot submit the form because I have some required fields that are not filled out. So we'll go ahead and save my form definition as is because I've got the basic controls that I need for a template. I do need to go to the fill dropdowns tab, and I need to have two dropdowns filled. Obviously, I need to fill function, and that gets filled with a business value, which is way down here, UAP somewhere. There it is, UAP functions. So we'll put a select one there, and the display text will be the function name. The value will be the function code. So that fills my function field. And then for my process field, we will just go back and do the same thing. Again, it's a business value, UAP processes. Select one, and we want the display text to be the process name, the value to be the process code, and the function will come from the function form field. Now we can update and run our form, and I should be able to pick facilities. And then once I do, oh, well, need to do one more thing. I need to make my fields event fields. So let's go back to the form controls tab, go back to my function dropdown and create it as an event field. There we go. Now let's update and run our form. And I should have nothing there, but I should have all of these things here, and I can pick facilities, and I should end up with 2 selections here. IT should give me 4 selections. It does, so I know that this is all working well. Accounting gives me all 6. I can go with expense report. I can pick my supervisor, which will be me. And I can pick I have to pick the process manager. which again will be me. We're going to have to fix that a little bit later. And I can submit my form and nothing happened. So update that form. Let's look at my options. Oh, I did not start this process after the form is submitted. Well, that would explain much. So we are going to go to our process and start our unified approval process. And we are going to link our unified approval process. That's why we built the timeline, even though it doesn't do anything, so that we could link our process. So now I should be able to update and run. What time is it? 11:50. So I got to think about closing this thing down. So again, I'll pick me, and well, doesn't really matter who I pick here because nothing is going to happen. I'll pick Diana. I pick submit, and I'm now running in activity 1. I didn't create any task instructions or even change its name, but there are my approvers comments required for submit deny. That's working. My details tab, which I didn't fill out because I didn't make it required. I didn't add any ad hoc approvers. I guess I should have. My fault. Well, it doesn't matter now because there's no second activity. So once I hit complete, it's done. And there's my routing slip. Everything is appearing the way that I want it to appear. So far, the basic configuration of my form is complete. So I'm pretty happy with that, but there are some other things that I am going to need to do. Looking ahead, I am going to need to create, because I have this basic form here and I've now got my functions and I've now got my processes, I'm going to have to do a couple of things. First of all, on the form itself, I have this process manager control. That's going to need to be filled out automatically. I don't really need, I do need to make this a required control because I do want to be sure that it gets filled out, but I don't need to have the user fill it out. What I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to be able to fill out this control based on what process I select. So I'm going to need a business rule that will take the selected process and return a user, and I need to set that user's value in this control. So I'm going to have that to make this thing work. I'm also going to need to be able to handle these ad hoc approvers down here. So I'm going to need to be able to set up my process timeline so that if I add these approvers on an ad hoc basis, I can assign a task to them appropriately. In fact, there's much more that needs to be done on the process timeline because I've got to figure out how my different functions are going to work differently. And I'm going to need to be able to determine when activities run based on what my activity request type is. So we're going to have to build a process timeline to do that. Now I'm going to build it a little more complicated fashion than I did the sample that I showed you earlier, but we'll take care of that next week, obviously. And finally, I'm going to need a template, an email template that gathers up all of my data and presents all of the appropriate information to all of my users. So all of that remains to come. But for right now, we have our form and we have our basic timeline. Now we just need to build on this to create a system that will enable us to submit many different types of requests for many different types of processes and to use the same process timeline for each one. We're going to build a system to do all of our approvals in a single application. For now, however, we are going to do nothing else because we have run out of time. Thanks for joining me this week. I will look forward to continuing this next week as we continue to build out our unified approval process. Have a great week. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, so long.